Two legendary market experts are stepping forward to warn we're in the earliest stages of what they call the Great Unraveling, a specific event starting to take root in America that's behind the recent crash in stocks and the record inflation you're seeing. But they worry it's about to get even worse. And many of the things you take for granted are due for a big disruption in the months ahead. Your Social Security benefits will likely be slashed. Your taxes are probably going way up. And many of your investments are likely to continue falling. Meanwhile, even if you think you've saved enough money to retire, you're probably going to need way more money than you thought. Your personal success all comes down to how well you understand what's heading your way. This is why I strongly encourage you to read about their warning today, totally free. It's all spelled out in a free report we've put together about the Great Unraveling. Get the facts yourself. Go to unravelingreport.com to get your free copy of this report. You can learn how to get their full playbook to prepare for what's coming. Again, that's unravelingreport.com for a free copy of this new report. Hi, this is Daniela Cambone. Welcome back to the Daniela Cambone Show here on Stansberry Research. And back with me today is a guest that said we were way off than a recession. This was mid-2022. So where does he see things as we're starting off a new year? Please welcome back Gregory Mannarino of traderschoice.net. Gregory, Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Happy New Year to you. Good to see you. Good to be back. I'm sure this is going to be exciting.
Let's talk, inflation. We're speaking the day after numbers, show that they're cooling. A lot of experts I speak to, not buying the narrative. I have an idea what you're going to say, but what's your take on inflation?
It's not going to stop. It's designed. Inflation is going to continue to rise as central banks fulfill their end game. The central banks have an end game, and that is to continue to inflate, period. A central bank's power resides in one thing, its ability to inflate. And they're buying it all right now. Central banks have one product. Their product is debt. The more debt they issue to the world, the stronger they become. Henceforth, why you got stopgap measures here in the United States to fund the government. Henceforth, why you have a $1.7 trillion spending package with all kinds of pork in it, including funding a war and whatever else they got to do here. The whole nonsensical, I'm going to say, dog shit narrative, how central banks really want to combat inflation and they're doing so by raising rates. It's a farce. Okay. Raising rates is meant to kill demand and henceforth crush the consumer. It's not meant to curtail inflation. How do you control inflation? Actually, you contract the money supply, but we don't hear a word about that. The central banks have the financial institutions raise their capital reserves. That's how you contract the money supply. We could stop inflation in its tracks, but they have no interest in doing this. If we literally could stop inflation, that's what they would do. But you see, this is a big secret that no one's allowed to know. Contract the money supply. What are they doing? They're inflating the money supply. You got Fed presidents like Bullard telling people, oh, look, the money supply is contracting. You can see that because people are pulling cash out of their bank accounts. People are pulling cash out of their money market accounts. Two metrics that are utilized to measure the global money supply. But the fact of the matter is people are pulling their cash out of these accounts because they're trying to make ends meet. At the same time, what are they doing? They're borrowing beyond their eyeballs here with regard to their debt burdens, household debt, consumer debt. All the stuff we talked about in the past is coming to light. And everything that I'm talking about here is also going to come to light at one point, but it's too late. People are not waking up fast enough, unfortunately. The people that follow our work, they get it. They get it. But most people walk through time and space. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they're doing. They just exist like zombies living in the now, not thinking about the future. It's a terrible thing. The population of the world, especially here in the United States, and I talk to everybody from all over, is the most dumbed down on the history of the planet. And they're becoming dependent on the system more so. And this mechanism is going to progress much further moving forward.
And I want to talk to you because, like I say in all my interviews, I want to give people tools of how to not be dependent on the system, how to just depend on yourself, because at the end of the day, that's the only person that you can count on. But let's talk. I want to understand a little bit more about the inflation story. So if you don't believe the numbers, right? Let's say, Why wouldn't they show us the real numbers?
Well, because none of the data, I don't trust any of the data at all. First of all, there's no actual verifying agency. It's like, okay, everyone, here's the data, and they tell us what it is. Look, they're telling us that inflation is. How many times have we heard peaking, the word peaking, inflation's peaking, it's peaking, I don't know, it must be 10 times over the last year or so. And every time they tell us it's peaking, it continues to rise. Is the pace slowing? Maybe, but it continues to rise nonetheless here. And they want us to believe that by some miracle at one point, this eventual raising of rates is going to crush demand so hard that it does bring down inflation here. Look, what did we hear right out of the mouth of the Federal Reserve? They need to kill jobs. They said this. One of these Fed president freaks came out, I can't remember the name, I think it was Fed President Daly, explained that in order for inflation to drop, people need to lose their jobs. How about we start off with these things over there? We don't need these organizations. Imagine a system, seriously, that is governed and controlled by private institutions that have their own interest in mind here. And why are we seeing things like consumer credit balloon, the global debt bubble hyper balloon? Because that's the nature of the beast. It's a debt-based system. And that's how it functions. It can't function any other way. And that's a big secret too. You don't learn this stuff in school that we have this. I mean, I bet you if they put me before an economics class and I asked people, for example, okay, what drives the world economy? That most people are going to say it's supply and demand. No, it's not at all. It's fear and greed. Fear is stronger. And that's why you see all these fluctuations here in the market, especially the debt market lately, which has given us warning sign after warning sign of how illiquid it actually is. And what are we seeing here? This phenomenon lately, global bond yields were rising. Now they're dropping. Now they're stabilizing. Who's doing that? Who's doing that? This is, again, central banks playing their game. And it's not going to stop. You have to understand something else. Okay, you got the Federal Reserve's public balance sheet. Yeah, sure, you can see it. But they're not telling anyone what's off balance sheet. Where does all this cash come from to fund wars, to warp speed vaccines, whatever it might? Where does it come from? We don't have it. We're broke, okay? Tax revenue doesn't even come close to funding the current deficits that we hold here in the United States. All that extra cash comes from one place, and that's the central banks, and all that's the Federal Reserve in this case, and it's all off balance sheet. It's stuff that we're not allowed to see. No one's allowed to see. But that's the truth here. Central banks working in concert to issue more of their product to continue to inflate because that's where their strength resides. That also means it's their Achilles heel. If we had enough people to understand the system, if we could prevent, and I've said this for a decade, central banks, any one of them, from issuing $1 single of more debt, just one, the entire system implodes. It has to be relentlessly fueled by adding more debt by any mechanism possible. That's how it works. It's debt-based. If we could take down one central bank, they'd all tumble because we're all doing the same thing. But they have people roped into believing that there's no other way. There's no way out of it. No way to sidestep the system. And a way would have been, and may still be, I don't know, is a non-central bank issued mode of transaction. And if we ever can come up with a viable one that isn't being attacked by central banks, by Wall Street, well, then maybe we could do that. But I doubt it. It's never going to happen. It's a nice little pipe dream, but they got a stranglehold on everyone.
So if they are orchestrating, if all the central banks are in concert with this and orchestrating this grand plan, Gregory, what's their, getting back to your point about their end game, how do they win in this?
Well,
who wins?
Because
is the better question.
Again, by owning it all. What do central banks do? What has been the goal of central banks since their inception? Okay, most people have no idea. Why were central banks even created? Because they want to create a better world? They want to make a prosperous world for everyone? Why is the entire world and every single developed nation around the world, including its citizenry, burdened beyond absolute belief in debt? Because that's the system. Once the central banks were able to grab control of the financial system, going from a wealth-based system being backed by a hard asset, let's say gold, to a fiat, so let it be, so it is, monetary system, they won. Okay, once we allowed that to happen here, and now central banks are using their product to own the world. Every single government today, the real government of the world is central banks. They control the financial system. They control the economy, which means they control the world. Everything else is nothing but a distraction, some kind of side act freak show. So central banks, their goal since their inception was to one day own and control the world. Today, I don't think there's a person alive who has even the slightest clue as to how central bank, how they work, could deny the fact that these institutions are in full control of the world, and everything else. Like I said, it's a puppet show. It's and we the people, we lose.
Let me ask you this: Chair Powell coming out earlier this week saying that bringing down inflation requires measures that are not popular. That they will be taking measures that are not popular. Were you surprised that he made this statement, or what do you think was the reasoning for it?
Well, what they're going to continue to do, not popular, meaning what? What has the Federal Reserve admitted to us here? That they are trying to crush demand. By crushing demand, they're hurting the consumer. So people are not going to be happy dealing with a rapidly deteriorating economic situation here. Small businesses having to shutter here. People, again, being forced to borrow just to make ends meet. What they're doing here, all right, is eliminating an entire class of people on a worldwide scale. And this has been something that's been going on for quite a long time, but it's accelerating as we move forward here. People who are former members of the middle class, just to maintain that illusion that they're still in the middle class, what are they doing? They're borrowing more and more and more. Meanwhile, they're saving nothing. And do they think maybe down the line there's going to be a price to pay? No. So central banks here are assuring, and it's in our face, that the global economy is going to continue to shrink. And that's going to pressure a lot of people. People are going to be losing their jobs by the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands here. We already know what these major corporations are doing. Layoffs, by the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. You think this is going to stop anytime soon? No, this is what they're talking about. The Fed is in here. Look, what are they going to do here? They've been raising rates for many, many months. We haven't seen anything dramatic happen with inflation. It's still rising, okay? So that is an environment that people are not happy. So they're killing demand, killing the man or the woman here, pressuring them to survive, or at least attempt to survive, in a deteriorating economic situation which they're bringing about. Why did central banks want to kill the economy? Very simple. They want to kill the economy so they can become the lender and buyer of last resort. What are central banks doing? They issue debt through one door, and then they buy it back through another. This mechanism has been going on and on and on and on, and this is how central banks are gaining more power. The moment we have a real leader that's like maybe wants to share the secret with everyone, say, listen, everyone, we have a debt-based economic model. We need to end it. In order to take back the system, we need a revolution against central banking. Central banking, in my view, is a curse upon the world. How can we possibly allow private institutions to run the financial system and henceforth the economy? Where is that written anywhere? It wasn't what our forefathers envisioned here in the United States. No, we were supposed to have a commodity-backed system or a wealth-based system which would enrich everyone. Okay, but no, we lost that. We all gave it up. Where's the revolt? Where are the people on the streets? They're being distracted. Look at this, focus on that. It's just nonsensical. But again, they got the people where they want them, by the throat. And that pressure that what Powell's talking about, it's going to get a lot worse. It's not getting better. There is no rainbow out there on the horizon here. The global economy is going to contract faster. People are going to suffer more, and unfortunately become more dependent on the system. That's what they need, more people to become dependent on it. And then what are they going to do? Eventually, this whole thing, it's not sustainable.
I want to get a few...
This global debt bubble...
No, you can finish your thought. I just want to get a few other points in.
The global debt bubble is going to continue to be hyperinflated until it bursts. And it's going to burst. And central banks are fueling it by getting in here. How does a central bank keep rates wherever they want it? Do they just say, We're going to keep rates low? No. Central banks have to get into the market. They have to make it happen. They're not magical. They can't just say something and it just happens. So we have this manipulation of the global debt market by central banks collectively, who are continuing to inflate because they have no choice. That's the backbone of the system. And people who have no clue at all of how the system works. They got people deaf, dumb, and blind, and maybe holding out some kind of hope that maybe things are going to change for them for the better. There's no shot in hell.
Any thoughts on central bank buying and gold? We've seen records amount in 2022. There's a mystery buyer of 300 tons of gold, all fingers basically pointing to China. Any thoughts on why the accumulation, sudden accumulation, super accumulation of gold by CBs?
Well, look, anybody who has even the slightest brain cell function, in my view, understands that these things are real wealth. When a central banker tells you that central banks hold gold for tradition, you know that they're lying to your face. And of course, there's no accountability today anymore. But if you look at anyone who has any kind of net worth, everybody is holding gold and silver. Why? Look, in my view, this is very simple, and I've been telling people this for the longest time. These are units of wealth. They have been so for thousands and thousands of years, and we don't need any central banker to reassure us of that. If we understand that this current debt-based economic model is eventually going to implode on itself. And of course, they're going to issue another system like it. It doesn't matter. If you're holding physical gold, physical silver, my favorite asset of all time, physical silver. And I tell people, why does Greg Mannarino say that silver is the most undervalued asset in the world? I just look at a couple of very simple metrics, and I urge people to just do a little homework on their own. Look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average gold ratio, and then the gold silver ratio. You look at these things, you will see how undervalued silver is, and gold too, and platinum and palladium as well. I own all the metals. Everybody knows that. I'm an open book. So, but look, that's why these are real units. These are real things, and why people need to have exposure to not just, in my opinion at least, gold, silver. They need exposure to commodities because they're real things. Right now, the environment is pretty straightforward. The stock market, although we are off record highs, still remains the place to be for a lot of reasons because central banks are going to continue to support the system, in my view. Okay. But until this risk-on system, meaning cash moving into equities, reverses, and it's going to in a very hardcore way, people need to be taking the opposite side of that trade and looking at commodities, because how this is going to play out is very simple. It's very easy. We have a debt market hyper bubble. Suppressed rates have caused distortions across the spectrum of asset classes, unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of the freaking world. Okay, now that's going to correct at one point. At one point, we're going to get a meltdown here, and the debt market rates are going to spike in an uncontrolled fashion, and no amount of debt buying by central banks is going to be able to fix the situation, because the currency is just the purchasing power of the currency is already getting sucked out. It's going to get sucked out very, very rapidly. The rising of rates in an uncontrolled fashion is just going to melt down the global equity markets. Okay, it's the polar opposite of what we've been seeing. Suppressed rates have inflated stock market bubbles around the world, reinflated a housing bubble, which is cracking, quite obviously. But again, debt market implosion kills global equity markets, and cash is just going to move from the debt market and from the equity market into commodities because they're real things. And then you're going to see risk on, turn risk off. Who knows what the value in dollars could actually be, because commodities are priced in dollars, when this whole thing really does turn around. And it's going to, in my opinion. It's just a hyper bubble.
So you're buying, are you still buying precious metals now?
Oh, I haven't bought in a long time, but I've been buying this stuff for so many years. I started buying silver when it was around, I have to say, $8, maybe less, maybe $7 or so. And I've been buying gold since it was less than $700, $700 around $700.
Is there anything in, you mentioned equities and that the Fed will continue to keep it afloat. Is there anything in the S&P that you like, or a sector that you're eyeing that you'd be in?
I think the energy sector, look, hedge funds are placing some pretty big bets on energy moving forward. Now, I'm not saying that we should mimic hedge funds, but I happen to agree that with them here. I think energy prices are going much higher moving forward. I'm not saying that people go out here and buy an energy company or an exchange traded fund that tracks energy, that they're going to start making money tomorrow. But again, understanding how this is going to play out moving forward, I think commodities and having exposure to commodities or energy is a good place to be moving forward here. I like large cap ETFs. One specifically, I have a large investment in is JEPI. Equity premium income. It pays a monthly dividend. The dividend is a hedge. I mean, at least you have the opportunity to maybe make some cash if the market continues, if it does go higher. And I don't think central banks are done. I also think the equity markets are going to underperform. Moving forward, I don't think we're going to see any big moves here or there, but look, all this depends on the debt market. Again, look, when people ask me about the stock market, okay, it's all well and good and fun to look at and maybe be invested in, but it's the drivers. We got to look at the global debt market. The global debt market is the thing that sets the price action for everything else. As a matter of fact, if you could consider that the stock markets of the world themselves are derivatives. They derive value from what's happening in the debt market. If in fact central banks manage to keep rates suppressed and give the resemblance of some kind of stability in the debt market. For example, we don't see a 10-year yield making a yo-yo kind of action. We just see it kind of remaining steady. You see a US dollar on a relative strength basis remain steady. This would be an environment where people would want to put cash to work again in the equity market. But if you have instability in the debt market, a wildly fluctuating dollar relative strength, well, that's gonna spook the equity market. So, I mean, that's how I look at it every day. I don't really care too much what the stock market is going to do. I look at the drivers being debt market, 10-year yield, and the relative dollar strength. That's what's driving the markets. So, and that's why I have this indicator. It's free to everybody. Right on my website, traderschoice.net.
Gregory Mannarino, thank you for setting up 2023 for us. I have to say, for once, maybe you agree with the World Bank and the IMF or warning about very difficult times ahead. Maybe you're on the same page as them for once.
Well, look, I mean, these institutions, they're responsible for what's happening here. But yeah, they're at least we're getting, once in a while, we get a little bit of truth. We get a little bit. And of course, what are they going to do? Because when this whole thing comes down, they're going to say, hey, we told you so. It's just crazy.
All right. Well, good catching up with you. Stay well, Gregory. We'll see you soon.
You too.
And thank you for watching. We'll have more content coming your way, so be sure to stay tuned to the Daniela Cambone Show and sign up at danielacambone.com. That's it for me. Thanks for watching.
Opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the contributor and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Stansberry Research, its parent company, or affiliates.